Way back in the spring of 1990, 10-year-old me was given a $5 allowance. In search of something to spend my money on, I came upon something fantastic at my local convenience store newsstand. It was then that I started a lifelong obsession with the gold standard of sequential art, the comic book. Now, as an old man, I have decided to open up some old boxes and dig into my comic book collection. I decided it's time for me to review and analyze the illustrations and artists that made me comics crazy. What's good, everybody? This is Chris Crazy House, and I want to welcome you once again to another episode of Chris Crazy House Presents Comics Crazy. We're going to be doing some fun stuff for the next few days. We're going to be looking at a 3-part series in the Wolverine comic, and it is called Blood and Claws. So this is actually one of my favorite little mini-series from back in the day in the Wolverine comic book series, where Wolverine and the hero Puck from Alpha Flight go back in time and they have to fight the evil Lady Deathstrike. So in my opinion, you know, Sabretooth is always probably the top arch nemesis for Wolverine, but Lady Deathstrike is a close second. Okay, Lady Deathstrike is actually one of my favorite villains from the Marvel Universe, and she's a great villain for Wolverine. She can match him claw for claw and viciousness for viciousness, because that's exactly what she is. She's nothing but pure viciousness. And we're going to be looking at this story. It is written by Larry Hama. The artwork is done by Mark Silvestri, and David Green does the inking. So we're going to look through all 3 issues, and we're going to start with issue number 35 of Wolverine. And so this cover, in my opinion, is probably not the best out of the 3. We're going to talk about the other covers when we get to those issues, but number 35, the cover is not great. The only thing I really like about it is Lady Deathstrike herself. I like the way that she's kind of jumping out on the cover, and she's even covering up a little bit of the Wolverine name with her claws. So you can kind of see just how fearsome she is. Like, your eyes are automatically drawn to her. I'm not saying that the cover is drawn badly, but I feel the cover probably could have been done a little bit better. You know, with the way the action is. Like, it could have been a lot more forceful. Like, I do remember buying this issue very much so. I bought this myself at a convenience store when I was out with my father, because I remember buying it with him that day, and then we went home, had lunch, and we got to watch some Kung Fu flicks in the afternoon. And I remember after watching the Kung Fu flick, I read this comic book. So, you know, I have great memories of this book, but the cover itself is just not my favorite. You know, but I do enjoy the artwork within the book. I love Mark Silvestri, especially during this time. In my opinion, this is where he was at his peak when he's working on these Wolverine books, and I love the inking on these books done by David Green. I think the way that they do the shadows of these characters and the silhouettes, it's really well done. Like, the only other artist I can compare it to maybe is like Mike Mignola when he worked on Hellboy. Like, the shadows almost kind of go into that type of vein, but I think this is very expressive and adds a lot of atmosphere to this book and these stories. And also, you're going to see, this is probably the first comic book that I bought where the writing style was a lot of narrative given by the main character. So Wolverine is kind of narrating things himself, as well as the dialogue that you see around him. So this is kind of like almost kind of like a noir type way of writing. And the Wolverine comics were the first comics I ever read where they were written kind of like in that style. And, you know, all the Wolverine comic books from this time period anyway were written in this way, where Wolverine kind of had his own internal dialogue on top of whatever was going on within the story. So we're going to take a peek in here and look at Wolverine number 35. As you can see, this book is well worn. That's because I've read it a lot and I really, you know, obviously enjoyed it, but it's got some wear and tear on it. I believe this came out right at the beginning of 1991. So if you want to know the year of this book, Wolverine number 35 came out in 1991, right at the beginning in January. So open up right here, right on the opening splash page. And the title of the book is called Blood, Sand, and Claws. And right off the bat, we got our hero, Wolverine, aka Logan, kind of standing in the background outside of a bar. And we see someone getting tossed out on their face. Now, what's funny about this is, on a personal note, I've actually seen this happen to somebody. Okay, I didn't, you know, when we look at old movies or old comic books or old cartoons and see people getting thrown out of bars or thrown out of somewhere, we don't imagine that that actually happens exactly like that in real life. But it does. I can assure you that it does. I've been to bars and I've been to clubs where people have literally been thrown out by security and landed on their face. I've seen people be like tossed out and like bounce off their head and bounce like off the curb and into a gutter somewhere, or bounce onto the street. So this happens. This is real. So, you know, as an adult, like as a child reading this book, I just thought it was, you know, great action. But as an adult, I can tell you, I've seen people thrown out just like this. And it's just as funny as seeing it, and just as ridiculous seeing it in real life as it is seeing it in this book. And I made a mistake. His name is, the inker's name for this book is Dan Green. I think I said David Green, so I apologize for that. His name is Dan Green. If I made that mistake, I apologize. But we get inside the bar, and Logan is visiting his old friend Puck from Alpha Flight. We all know that Wolverine is from Canada, so he was actually a part of these Canadian super teams, so he knows a lot of the characters from Alpha Flight very well, and he's good friends with Puck. And Puck is doing some bouncing himself. So Puck was the one that threw that guy out just like that on his face, that biker. And Wolverine's asking him, you know, what are you doing here? And Puck's basically just saying that, you know what, he's filling in for a friend. And his friend here is this young lady here. She was the original bouncer of this bar, but her arm is broken. So she asked Puck to come in and help out with being the bouncer for the club. And while they're in there, or while she's in there, this is how they take their breaks in Canada. This is how they do like little tough games or whatever. They play games called Split the Fly, and they put some sugar down on the table and then chop the fly in half with a knife. Now Logan's going to show you how he plays the game, because she just kind of proved how tough she is and how cool she is by splitting the fly with this knife. So Logan's going to show you how he does it. Before we get to that, we are introduced to Lady Deathstrike. She is breaking into a facility in Japan because she's on the hunt for Wolverine. She wants to get revenge against him and take his adamantium skeleton, because she believes that all that technology and that procedure of bonding adamantium to a human skeleton, that belongs to her father. And for some reason, she blames Wolverine for the whole process. It really doesn't make much sense, because Wolverine was not a willing participant in the Weapon X program. At least that's what we are led to believe at this time. So I don't know why she blames him so much, and why she feels like she has to torment him as much and not the people that were responsible for Weapon X. But, you know, it adds to a layer of menace and revenge for this character. So that's how it's going to be in this story. So she gets into this facility, finds out Wolverine has been there. She can see the claws slashed through this tanker for Wolverine to escape. So she knows he's been there. And the cops show up to stop her. And while they're there, they get murdered by Lady Deathstrike, because she obviously does not want anyone in her way. And one of the things I like about Lady Deathstrike is just how savage and just how ruthless she is. She doesn't care about anything else but getting back at Wolverine and accomplishing her goal in that. And nothing and no one is going to stand in her way. She even turned herself into this in order so she can get revenge on Wolverine. All right, because she used to be just a regular samurai type woman, and that actually is showcased in this issue of Alpha Flight. So just to kind of show off this other part of my collection, I do have this issue where Lady Deathstrike is here, and she's in more of just regular samurai armor. She's still human in this book, but going into here, she actually got herself turned into an actual cyborg so that she can actually face Wolverine more on physical terms. So she kills the 2 security guards, and, it's done in a very horror type fashion where she kills one this way, like her fingers extend and impale him. And then you see her claws, the shadow of her claws kind of extending over the police car. And we see that this man is screaming, and you can only see his eyes here in this panel. So very much done just like a horror movie or any type of horrific scene that you would see. Very well done with the shadows. You see how he put the light on her, and you can kind of just see part of her within the silhouette. And I like how this is done monochromatically. So this is a way of getting around the comic book code to where you can show violence, but it's not so over the top. So they made it monochromatic, just with like a magenta type color. But because it's red, you can tell it's a violent scene as her claws are going through his body. There's going to be lots of that in this 3-part miniseries. So back to the bar up in Vancouver in Canada. And we see that Logan is going to show how he splits the fly by pouring the sugar on his arm. And the bouncer lady is saying, oh, let me guess, you're going to split the fly without it nicking your skin. And Puck lets her know that Logan does not have that type of finesse. So just watch what he's going to do. And that as they're playing their game, the bikers that got thrown out of the bar are coming back for another fight. And right when they come in, they see Logan playing his own version of Split the Fly, and he literally stabs himself in the forearm. Okay, so that's how he splits the fly. He just winds up stabbing himself, and we all know Wolverine can easily heal from a wound like this. But we see that he raises his arm up, and the knife is going in so far that it's actually impaled into the table. So when he lifts up his arm, he lifts up the table as well. And the bikers see this, and they just run the hell up out of there because they don't want any smoke with Logan right now. And I can understand them on that regard, because you don't want to play with somebody that willingly stabs themselves in the arm like that. Because even if you didn't know he was a mutant, you would think that this person must be a psychopath at this point. So we cut back to Lady Deathstrike, and she's used some of her cybernetic wiring to plug into the police scanner so she can get some more information on Wolverine in Japan. And she finds out that he was recently in Madripoor. We all know that Wolverine likes to hang out there as the investigator known as Patch, where he wears a patch over his eye, and he's well known to one of the crime lords of that area, Tiger. So this is the next spot where she's going to go search for Logan. She's going to go to Madripoor, which is one of the filthiest, scum-ridden crime spots in the entire world. At least that's how it is within the Marvel universe anyway. And she's getting help from Pierce, who is also a cyborg. So if anyone remembers the Hellfire Club when they were first introduced in the X-Men books during the Dark Phoenix saga, Pierce was one of the members of the Hellfire Club, but he plays very prominently as kind of like I guess you could say like the hand behind everything in a lot of the Wolverine comic books from this time. Because even though he's not a mutant himself, he is a cyborg. He seems to be a master of cybernetics and creating artificial like androids and stuff like that. So he has his own group known as the Reavers, and he also works with people like Lady Deathstrike and this Aboriginal mutant who can create like teleportation holes and stuff like that named Gateway. And that's who we're introduced to here. So Lady Deathstrike says she got some more information on Logan, and she wants Donald Pierce to command Gateway to send her there so she can find out more information in Madripoor, and she can catch up with Logan and get her revenge. And that's when basically Pierce is telling her that Gateway, even though he's under his control, he still doesn't want to be, because Gateway as his Aboriginal self is more of a force of nature that wants more peace and harmony, but he's being forced to work with these villains, and he really does not want to be helping Pierce, but he's got to do it anyway because he's obligated to do so. And so the reason that the only way Pierce can get him to open these gateways to certain places is to kind of ask him in an indirect manner. He can't be as direct or just shout orders at this guy. So he orders Gateway to help out Deathstrike in any way that he can, and she asks to be sent to Madripoor in order to figure out where Logan is, and she winds up going to Tiger's casino in Madripoor. And, Deathstrike doesn't really have much tact. She doesn't have any type of decorum. She just basically asks, where's Logan, and grabs up one of the waitresses by the throat and basically says, you're going to tell me where he is or else she's going to start killing people in there. Now, the security tells Tiger that, go ahead and tell this woman where Logan is. As soon as she lets go of the waitress, we're going to just open up and shoot her anyway. So Tiger pulls out a postcard that she got from Logan, gives it to Deathstrike, but before the security can shoot her, Deathstrike disappears. And this is when she finds out that Logan is in Vancouver, because she reads right here on the postcard. So cut back to daytime in Vancouver, and Logan and Puck are chilling out on the boat, having some beers, doing some fishing, and doing what guys do, just hanging out there. And Puck is reminiscing about his time when he was, before he became super short, and when he was back in World War II, or this is pre-World War II, actually. So I guess Puck served some time during the Spanish Civil War, and he was friends with Ernest Hemingway as well. So that's what Puck is showing here, that he has the book that Ernest Hemingway wrote, and he shows an old picture where he was kind of snuggled up with this young lady here and Ernest Hemingway. And the weird part is that Logan actually remembers all this, and Puck is asking him, how in the hell do you remember this? I don't remember you being there. And Logan's saying, like, that's weird. I don't know how I remember it. So at first we're thinking that this is some sort of weird memory thing or memory transplant that Logan might have. But we're going to find out later that Logan was actually there back during the Spanish Civil War, pre-World War II. And what Lady Deathstrike asked Gateway to do, she's like, send me to the place that Logan is looking at right now. Because she figures if she is wherever Logan is looking at or whatever Logan is thinking about, then that will put her directly in front of him. But at this point, Logan is actually sitting there reminiscing and thinking about being back in Spain during the late 1930s. And Deathstrike goes through the teleportation. She appears in front of Logan. But the problem is the Gateway is sending her to where she asked to go. She asked to go where Logan was looking at and what he was thinking about. And then we know that he had his eyes closed and he was thinking about 1930s Spain. So she makes a stop over there, and both Logan and Puck get caught up in the time vortex, and voila, they wound up right in 1930 Spain. They just pop up right in the middle of a matador pit. They're having a bullfight, and Logan and Puck show up right there. Now, I don't know why this has happened. I think just because of the time stream, Puck has come back to his original size. So he's not the little short guy anymore. He's a fully grown man that he was back during the 1930s. So, you know, they show up here, and the characters don't seem to realize how they got there in the first place, but they're wondering, like, why are they out there in the middle there fighting a bull? And Puck decides that he's going to relive his glory days as an actual bullfighter in Spain. And we see this very well-drawn scene of a bullfight with Puck kind of distracting the bull with the cape. And Logan has decided to go back up in the stands and hang out with Ernest Hemingway and have a couple of drinks with him and this pretty young lady named Inez. So they've kind of slipped back into the past and kind of just settled right in as if nothing else was going on. And right as Puck finishes off this bull, the bull gets completely obliterated by an airstrike. So back during the Spanish Civil War, here's a little bit of a history lesson. There was one side that was for fascism and had linked up with the Nazi party and with the fascists over in Italy. So they got a lot of military aid from the other fascists. And there was one side in Spain that was fighting against that. So that's why it was called the Spanish Civil War. That, you know, it wasn't just Germany that was falling for the fascist scam that was going on in Europe at that time. A lot of other countries tried it the same way. Okay, so I believe in Spain it was Franco who was the leader of the fascist party there at the time. So the war is breaking out, and we got some actual Nazi Air Force flying down and bombing this city, which is Guernica. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm not pronouncing Guernica correctly, you can correct me in the comments section. But I believe that's how it's pronounced. And this was a very well-known bombing, very famous. Even Pablo Picasso painted a picture of it. And they even mention it here that, you know, this is what Picasso painted. So what's interesting about this book is you actually get a little bit of history lesson too. It's not just action and comic book characters. You get some actual history going on here with famous authors, famous painters, and famous scenes from the World War II era in Europe. So as the group of people are trying to avoid getting shot by these planes, the Air Force going there, strafing the field and shooting at innocent civilians, Wolverine gets the idea to take out one of these bombers by getting the sword from Puck. And instead of, you know, shooting at this guy or trying to use a gun, Wolverine says this is another way of playing split the fly. And he throws the sword at the jet. And somehow it goes through the plane and gets right into the cockpit, killing the pilot and causing the pilot to crash into one of the bell towers. So I'll say this about this series. They do a lot of teasing as far as Wolverine using his actual, you know, claws and powers in this story. We really don't get that until the end, the last issue where he faces Lady Deathstrike. But he has other very creative ways of taking out enemies in these first two issues. And that was one of them. Literally throwing a sword at an airplane and causing it to crash. I guess this can happen if you have mutant strength or whatever, but it does seem kind of far-fetched, but we are in a comic book world, so whatever, right? We've traveled through time, we're dealing with mutants and cyborgs, so why the hell not, right? But very well illustrated by both Mark Silvestri and Dan Green. Once again, you see their very creative use of silhouettes, you know, without having to put too much detail into the surrounding area or even the, the plane itself. They were able to creatively use silhouettes and not get too bogged down with a lot of the details of, the very ornate architecture or the ornate vehicles of that time period. They were able to get the point across and let you know what we're looking at here and still have a very interesting illustration going on. And you see the pilot get stabbed, the plane going out of control and hitting the bell tower of this cathedral. So very well drawn. I enjoy panels like this a lot. And we go to our main heroes going to escape, and Ernest Hemingway has decided to go ahead and give them a ride. And they go off with him into the hills to join with the rest of the rebel party that is fighting against the fascists here in Spain. And as we close out here, we have Lady Deathstrike looking with her binoculars, trying to find which way Logan is going. And we see that she has killed an entire group of German troops. So right then and there, we see that, she doesn't give a damn about who she's fighting, who she has to kill. All she concentrates on is how she's going to get Wolverine. And it doesn't matter who's in her way. She's already killed a whole bunch of people just being there for the first few minutes. And we'll see another group of German police pulling up on her in their half track here. And they've decided that since she's killed their men, that they're going to hang Lady Deathstrike. And this is where we get our first cliffhanger. And in the next issue, we're going to find out what happens with Lady Deathstrike and this German police patrol. So far, so good. We jump right into the action. We've seen Lady Deathstrike kill a whole bunch of people, from some Japanese police to going to Madripoor and yoking up waitresses. And now she has come back in time with both Wolverine and Puck, and she's on the hunt for Wolverine. So very cool story, very cool start to a action-packed 3-part miniseries called Blood and Claws with Wolverine here. Once again, not a fan of this cover. I like the other covers a lot more. I think they're done a lot better than this one. But I do like the way Lady Deathstrike looks on this cover. I think that's, if you could draw any character that look fearsome and scary like this, you're winning if you can draw a character that looks like this, because she looks scary right here. She looks scary, she looks terrifying, and she's definitely not a character that I would want to mess with. Okay, but as far as like some of the other elements of this cover, I'm not that much of a fan of it. I think it could have been drawn a little bit. I just think the composition could have been a lot better, but it's okay for what it is. It shows exactly what's going on in this book. So anyway, if you guys enjoyed this issue of Wolverine and the beginning of the Blood and Claws miniseries, let me know in the comment section. Make sure you go ahead and comment on these videos as well. Don't just go by and hit the like button. I know you're hitting the like button and subscribing, but go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think about these comic books, because I know a lot of you are comic book fans out there. It's not just me. I know I'm not the only black kid or the former black kid that was fans of these books back then. You can go ahead and let me know how you feel about this type of artwork and the paneling and the drawing and the storytelling in the comment section. And if you have these issues, you can go ahead and let me know what's your favorite part as well. So we're going to be doing part 2 and part 3 very soon. So make sure you go ahead and subscribe to this channel. If you're not subscribed, make sure you like this video and make sure you go ahead and share it with someone who is a comic book fan, or at the very least, someone who is a fan of Wolverine. Anyway, folks, this is Chris Crazy House, and I'll be signing out. Peace.